Welcome to the Vet Show, episode number 15, presented by Garmin heart rate monitors and scales. Coach Robb, good afternoon, sir. It's been a month since I've seen you. You're looking beautiful.
Thank you so much, brother.
Or
I
handsome.
know
You're looking handsome. Sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. That's all right for some people, right? No, man, as we tease literally every single show, it just doesn't seem like a month has gone by. And I've just blown away the number of responses we've been getting to our conversations. So I appreciate the opportunity to have another one here this month. And I think this one's going to be interesting. I think it's going to catch a lot of people off guard.
You know what's
Familiar
crazy?
topic, but a little bit more meat on the bone. What's
You
that,
know what's
brother?
crazy is I was highly involved in another podcast. It's kind of what I've been known for, and I'm doing another podcast with a female friend of mine, Allie, Real Housewives of Moto. So check that out. I'm not a housewife coach, but it's funny that everybody now comes up to at the track and they're like, "Hey, man, love the vet show you're doing with Coach Robb. Like, it's the information is so useful. The topics are great. It hits home to us, and that to me is so rewarding. That guys and gals, hit me up at the track and they're like so appreciative of this show. There's nothing else like it. So, Coach, I I don't know. You probably get it too, I'm sure.
No, I'm glad to hear that, and I always like engaging with the comments that we see here on YouTube. If you're watching us here, or if you're listening to us in a podcast, I get a lot of DMs on the Complete Racing Solutions. But yeah, and like you and I talked about when we first were kind of tossing the idea around, I've been public about the idea that this was your brainchild to begin with, so I'm forever thankful. But the idea here is I'm glad people are using it as a resource. And the beautiful part about all of these recordings that we've done in the 14 previous shows, they're never going to go away. So as we talk about various subjects, and then we might come back and revisit a subject in a year or two, I want the listener to think about themselves developing as an athlete. Hey, when you heard a subject about nutrition or sleep or food or strength or sports psychology, if you heard us on episode number 2, we might be talking about it on episode number 42, but we're going to be talking about it based on the idea that you heard it, you applied it, you hopefully, been able to implement it. And you've seen that incremental improvement. And that's where I always say the knowledge needs to continue to grow. We don't want to punish somebody who's been with us since episode number 1, right? We respect the idea that they've grown, their knowledge is improved, they've applied it. So when we get these episode numbers into double digits like they are, our promise to the listener, the topic may be the same, but the level of knowledge is going to continue to go up every time we talk about it. And as we always say, take the knowledge, put your experience through it, then go back and look at the output. Because the idea for you to get the aha moment is when you take the concept, apply it, and then all the pieces click. That's our goal. So I'm glad people are giving you positive feedback. I am enjoying it all.
And it's funny because there was an older gentleman the other day that approached me and said, "Hey Dan, I love you and Coach Robb are just awesome. I love your show." He says, "But you guys talk about sleep and stress a lot." And I'm like, "We do." And he's like, "Well, I figured out why you do." He's like, "Because I've been trying to implement what you guys have been talking about in these shows because they tend to come up frequently." He's like, "The reason why I get it now, it's because it's important." He's like, "And after I started implementing it, I get it." And so I thought that was cool.
That's very cool.
It was
And
very good
add another
feedback.
dynamic. Here's what's kind of awkward about being a human being at in any level of athleticism. We literally have become desensitized that we think being exhausted is our norm. And then when you talk to athletes and the listeners and the subscribers, when they start talking about the idea that they started to feel what it's like to not be exhausted, they almost felt guilt. They feel guilty because they think that the only way, like, to really show that you're putting in the work, you have to be chronically exhausted all the time. And that's this honestly, Dan, we could sit and talk about it for 5 hours nonstop in regards to what does it look like, how we're so desensitized to it. When you start to come out of it, almost starts to feel awkward, then you almost kind of feel like a guilty pleasure. So our tendency is to go back into our old ways.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting when you
Well,
think
that's
about
a
it.
good, it's going to be a good segue into today's show. It's today's show is episode 15, Recover Like a Pro, even with limited time and resources. But coach, I got to know number 15. Who comes to mind?
Oh boy. As everybody knows, I'm still stuck in the 80s. I love my 80s music. I love my 80s movies. Um, I have to go Tim Ferry. Being here in Florida, watching him, go all the way to the factory Yamaha rig, over to Cowie, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, it's hard for me not to pick Tim Ferry. We've teased about it before in those 80s and 90s when the number plates were, 14 feet by 14 feet wide on the front of the
Yep.
bike and just a big, bright white square. And these just, numbers that we used to get down at the hardware store. Now think about all the graphics companies that are out there with all the different types of designs. It's pretty amazing how far it's come. But I'd have to go number 15, being from Florida, Mr. Tim Ferry. How about yourself?
Tim Ferry, I think, rode for Mach 1 Motorsports too, correct? Back in the day,
That would be a great trivia question.
I
I
think.
don't know the
Maybe,
honest answer. I'd
maybe
have
not.
to guess.
I don't know. I thought he was
Um,
Mach 1 on Yamaha.
I was thinking, if you go backwards, because he retired with Cowie,
Yep.
and then you go back before that would be Yamaha. And I was trying to think what type satellite. See, it wouldn't be Subway. That would be Pingery. I was thinking there was Performance Engineering. Performance
Oh yeah,
Engineering
yeah,
was
yeah.
who he was
Okay.
with.
Yep,
Yep,
yep, yep.
that's who he was with.
Well,
Again, another Florida based company. Go ahead, excuse me.
number 15, obviously Tim Ferry. He was a legend, right? Um, but it's again, I'm a little bit younger, coach, so it's hard for me to not pick Grandpa Earl, Dean Wilson. I mean, he's kind of semi-retired now. I don't know. He filled in a little bit this year, with Honda when Jet was out, but just Dean Wilson. I don't know if you ever spent much time around him, but
Mm.
he's one of the nicest human beings ever. He's just one of the realest guys in the pits, and he's funny as shit. He is extremely cheap, which is funny. Yeah, and his Grandpa Earl videos. If the listeners, I'm sure you guys have all seen Grandpa Earl on YouTube. There's two videos now. He did the second one, but it's absolute genius. I don't know, Coach, if you saw even this year when he filled in for Jet. There was a couple opening ceremonies that he came out dressed as Grandpa Earl. So
I only
very
saw a
cool.
little bit. Yeah, I only saw the ones where he came out, for the people who put it on Instagram, where he kind of drops the elbows down. He's doing the donuts out on the starting gate. But yeah, props for like uh, all of them have been good, right? All the way back to the original one when he's at the track with his grandson. But that last one when I mean, to I don't know how Dean was able to do it, but to get Lars and everybody at the you know factory Honda, the secretary, and all of that, and then to get him out there at the test track, and just the way that they did it, all the way going back to Jets, when they were down at Jets' place and
Yeah.
them sneaking in. Yeah, it's next level. The one thing that I think is so fascinating about Lars at Honda is, and I hope that all of our listeners understand this. Lars literally started at factory Honda pushing a broom, literally
Yep.
at the warehouse, excuse me, at the corporate offices. His dad was running, I think he was running Honda racing program as a whole, if I'm not mistaken. But to see where Lars is at today and still so grounded, I've not met him personally, but the Grandpa Earl videos, when you see the interviews, even when athletes get hurt, he doesn't dodge the cameraman. He'll answer questions. He doesn't get himself in trouble, incriminate himself, but he also doesn't just pussyfoot around the subject. I like Lars a lot as a team manager. I think a lot of guys can learn from him.
And shout out to Lars. He last month at Mammoth, he did very well off the couch. He hasn't ridden in a while. Joined one of the vet classes, and off the couch, I think he went like 9:11 or 9:13 or something like that. But great ride, got himself a whole shot in one of the motos. So yeah, shout out to
Yeah.
Lars.
So I'm thinking that we need to get a Loretta's class together, because now you've got the conversation going. Who's the fastest team manager out there? You have Carlin from Beta. Everybody was saying he was the top dog. And then Martin Davalos had a problem with that. So now
Yeah,
you've got Martin in there. Now you've thrown Lars into the equation. I think we need to have an ex-pro class at Loretta's.
yeah,
Ricky Carmichael, Jeff Emig, now Chad Reed's qualified, Rhino, God bless Mike Brown. Hope you heal up 100%, bud. Mike Brown out there. Um, you got to put Barry Karsten in there. He was a pro, even though he's been racing for decades. In fact, I don't think he's ever a year he hasn't raced from going amateur to pro to going to Loretta's. But I would love to see an ex-pro class and let them bring what bring what you wrong, bring Ricky's, works RMZ 450 and bring MX bikes out and Rhinos bikes out in the whole 9 yards. But yeah, I think it'd be cool. Now we have who is the fastest team manager? That's what we got to figure out.
I think that'd be great. I think we should you know what, coach, let's try to let's put it together, you know. We still got Brandon Haas from Club. He's quick.
He's still
Uh
competitive. Yeah.
yeah. So no, that'd be a fun one. All right,
Start
let's get
going through
into
that. We start going through that, man. We can start to unravel a lot of cool things because
yeah.
then you have to go and bring in Larry Brooks from HEP, and then
Oh yeah.
yeah. And then we got to be careful that Jeremy McGrath and Villapoto don't become a team manager, come in and they rock the whole thing. They got to stay in the X Pro category. That's it.
Yeah.
Got to bring the Villapotos out and all. Oh man, you know who I'd love to see come out X Pro? Grant Langston.
Oh, GL.
How badass would that be?
I love everything about GL, coach.
No,
Everything about GL I love.
I know we're getting off subject, but that would just be cool class.
It would be
Any X
it'd be
Pro,
way cool.
you know? Yep.
It'd be way cool.
Good.
All right, well, let's roll into it. Recover like a pro, even with limited time and resources. This is what I love about this topic right here is it doesn't matter how much time you have, and it doesn't matter what resources. There is a solution for everybody, and we're gonna walk through that today. I want to start the first topic is training too hard on easy days, training with incorrect heart rate zones. This coach, I see a lot. I'm guilty of it, you know, especially if it's a day where I just want to kind of go ride for fun and, you know, it's supposed to be an easy day, which most of my days I try to take as easy, you know, but you blow yourself out. And you know, guys, they think, you know, they're going to Loretta's you know, in August, and they have to just, you know, put in the laps and blow themselves out when they go to the track. And that is not necessarily beneficial.
No, it's not beneficial. And I think at this point, everybody who has stayed with us, Dan, realizes that what we specialize in is setting the context. We don't just make a one-line comment about fitness or nutrition or sleep or anything else. I love the way that you described it because I think the majority of our listeners are going to think about training too hard on your easy days. And that's pretty straightforward, right? If I have the opportunity to have you train with accurate heart rate zones, and I have this ability to deliver a schedule to you that fits your personal and your professional schedule, there's a huge asterisk that goes beside it, Dan. That's if nothing goes wrong. And this is where I want the listeners to kind of shift their perspective 1 degree. What I specialize in working with vet riders is when you say to me, I've got X amount of time per day, collectively per week, this is all the time I have. My specialty is creating workout schedules on and off the bike that match that availability of time, and then we get a chance to go race. Here's the catch. You, Dan, planned on going out on Saturday. You were going to ride with Zeb at E Street, right? All of a sudden, you get called out at work and you end up pulling a 22-hour work shift because something goes wrong and you got to put a fire out. Well, now you're still going to go ride on Saturday because it's on your schedule. Your bride, Sabrina, is like, yeah, no problem. Everything's cool. I know you're going to go ride on Saturday. And this is where I want the listeners to have an aha moment. Where it becomes dangerous is you still want to ride on Saturday. It may be the only day during the week, but your professional schedule, or maybe your personal schedule, maybe you have a little one and he or she got sick. You end up pulling up an all-nighter. Dan, you've taken your daughter to the ER. It's running a fever, can't get the temperature to come down, right? So now we're kind of holding ourselves in this rigid schedule. We're so pumped to ride on Saturday, but then we have something that brings us in excessively fatigued. Now it's difficult because not every track has a turn track. So again, if I was creating a perfect world for Mr. Dan, and you say to me, "Hey Rob, you sent me this schedule. I send my schedules out to my clients every Friday for next week. That gives them a chance to look at it over the weekend. If you have something that's coming up at work or with family, I can adjust that schedule, get it back to you at the beginning of the week. You call me up on Friday morning and you go, Dan, or excuse me, Rob, I'm supposed to go ride tomorrow, but I just spent 20 hours putting out a huge fire at work where I had my daughter in the ER all night long." Well, if you can keep your wheels on the ground, you can still stay in contact with the bike, but you reduce the risk of injury. And that's where I wanted to take this first subject when people talk about training too hard on their easy days. If you're just with it, you have no interruptions whatsoever. I do see a big problem where when someone says it's an easy day, and I want the listeners to think about this, Dan. If you and I went to the track and I were to ask somebody, hey, I want you to go out and give me a 4-lapper, super easy based on Dan's terms of easy, right? We look at the average and we look at the max heart rate on Garmin. And then I say, okay, go out and give me a 4-lapper at race pace. The heart rate average and max and the lap times probably won't deviate by any margin whatsoever.
Yeah.
We get trained, we have one gear. So this is where I was hoping that this first example would kind of create an aha moment for people. We're not saying, I mean, we could say if you have a perfect schedule, hey, if I need you to be in heart rate zone 2 and below, and it includes being on the motorcycle, that's a skills and drills in the starts day. The idea is you keep the heart rate low and you're just working skills and drills. And here's the reason why. If you go too hard on your easy days, it leaves you prematurely fatigued to go hard enough on your quality days. Dan, you and I have worked together for a long time. We have 5 zones that we work off of, from aerobic all the way up to anaerobic. You can go aerobic to anaerobic threshold, lactate tolerance, but we work on 5 energy systems. Think about that.
Yep.
So if our listeners are having a challenge getting their sprint speed up, I want you to, instead of using the word sprint speed, I want you to think about heart rate. At what heart rate number are you at when you're at your sprint effort? Let's just say for conversation's sake, you're at 190. Well, Dan, you tell me you're going to go to the track and work on your sprint speed. Until you get the heart rate above 190 on the motorcycle, you're not improving that energy system. Your max heart rate number changes from motorcycle to rower to running to swimming to cycling, mountain bike, gravel bike, elliptical. Your max heart rate number changes based on how much muscle you use. So I can work on your sprint speed off the motorcycle using accurate heart rate numbers. But here's the catch. Dan, if you don't get the heart rate high enough, i.e. the low number of zone 4, you're not improving the energy system. And improving the energy system has a few dynamics. You got to teach your body how to dissipate heat, deliver enough sugar, keep enough water in the system to wick away heat, and then the muscles will be able to step up. So it's not just about how hard you can go, it's a specific number you've got to get above.
Well, and I think you just hit on it, right? There's some precursors to even getting your heart rate zone in the appropriate spot and allowing your heart muscle to work like it's supposed to. And that's making sure that you're hydrated. I'm everybody knows at this point. I think I'm guilty of that, of kind of dehydrating myself. So yeah, and then your blood sugar. There's some critical things that need to take place before you can accurately look at your heart rate zones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people miss that.
Well, and that's why I wanted to make sure that that I appreciate you putting these out the way you have. When we talk about this first one, when most people would hear us say go too easy or go too hard on your easy day, they're thinking about, Chase Sexton and Cooper Webb and Jet going out and going too hard on an easy day. No, no, no. For you, the listener, it applies. What's going on in your personal and professional life? Because now if you've gotten pushed, even though it was going to be an easy day, it needs to be even easier, because I'm not going to be the one that says, hey, Dan, you're just too tired to get on your bike. You're like, Rob, that's the only day during the week I get. I've been doing this for 40 years and worked with a tremendous amount of vet riders. We get it, right? One of the reasons why we work our asses off during the week is for the pleasure to have a dirt bike and go ride. Dan, you and I have talked about it. We're essentially in a position now where we can afford a bike to go ride that maybe our parents didn't have, or parents weren't willing to pay for it, or whatever it may be. We all have a very similar story in different ways. But when we talk about going too hard on your easy days, remember, if you're coming in after a long night, you got to make it even easier. And that's where the heart rate monitor, because if you're tired, heart rate's going to spike really easy. So maybe you can only butter 5 or 6 right-hand turns, and then you might have to take a 5-minute break, get the heart rate back down, go the other direction, butter some left-hand turns. Just keep watching the heart rate. So that way, if you know that you're already tired coming in, you reduce your risk of injury. Definitely keep the wheels on the ground. I know that's not the most popular for a lot of people, but
no, and that's what I'll do though. I mean, because a lot of times, I have obviously stressful weeks, right? I got a lot going on in my life, but I
absolutely.
my escape is to go ride Saturday, right? Coach, 9 times out of 10, my body is smoked by the time I get to Saturday, right?
Yeah.
But I still want to go out. I still want to have fun. We don't unfortunately have turn tracks here in Northern California. There's none of the track owners provide a turn track. But,
Mhm.
I'll go do 3 or 4 laps and then I'll literally just roll around the track in second gear, just kind of rolling jumps and just letting my heart rate, because at least I'm still on the bike. I'm still out there, right? I'm still putting in time. And then once my heart rate comes back down, then I'll put in a couple more, good laps. But at least I'm fulfilling having fun as well, right? It's not just because honestly, coach, even if we had a turn track, I don't know that I would ride it personally because
Mhm.
I like to go jump. I like to go,
Yeah.
I like to hit the jumps. And there's a certain fun factor that us old guys and gals like to have as well, right? And so for me, that works.
Well, and I like the fact that you were talking about adjusting the heart rate. Like you said, do a essentially one lap easy, let the heart rate come down. And then, like you said, maybe you charge one straightaway and kind of cruise the second straightaway and just keep. I think there's this ideology that it has to be all WFO or you just might as well be sitting in back at the pit. I'm like, no, man, don't lose that opportunity. You don't have to send that triple, double, single it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To your point, you're still on the bike, you're still out on the track, especially when it's partitioned off and you only get 20 minutes out of an hour. Then you're
Yep.
forced to sit there for 40 minutes. But I just when we're part of the show here is increasing the longevity of our listeners, decreasing the risk of injury, and going out there when you're already physically exhausted, not such a good idea. And again, I didn't want people to think it's only relevant to people who have a perfectly manageable schedule. No, we get it, man. Yeah, if you do have a schedule that's pretty regimented, I'm not going to say it's easier, but as a statistical percentage, it's a lot easier for me to build a week around what we know when there's not a lot of deviations. By the time you get to the motorcycle, I'm going to make sure that you're as fresh as we can possibly be. We even have our athletes kind of shift. It's not a Monday through Sunday. We always say your first day of the week is the day on the motorcycle. And we treat it like almost like a high profile race where all week we're just getting ready for that one day. Sure, we cross train and we do other things. But again, if you're not getting paid to ride your motorcycle, which very few people do, if you really think about it, I mean, what would that percentage be? One half of one half of one half
Oh,
of
yeah.
1%?
Yep.
For the amount of bikes that are out there, like Mitch Payton says, you're never wealthier in your life than when you get paid to ride a dirt bike.
That's right. That's right.
Amen.
Okay. Anything else that we want to add to training too hard on the easy days before we move on to number two?
No, sir. Just as long as
Okay.
everybody knows your heart rate zones are specific to the modality that you're doing, and it's okay. Look at your fatigue levels mentally and physically. Even if you don't have a Garmin, like you said, Dan, when you're mentally spent. You don't need
Yep.
a number to tell you, you know.
And it just because you can't do 20 minutes wide open
Yep.
doesn't mean anything, right? Just
Get out there,
stay
have
out
fun.
there, just do the laps, have fun, watch your heart rate, and get your laps in. Okay.
Absolutely.
Number two, making recovery nutrition a priority, avoiding reds. Hey, coach, you're gonna have to school us on what reds are.
Yep. If you guys are in a position where you can take some notes, I want you to write this down. You can even Google it, but I'll give you the Cliff Note version. This study started out of the British Journal of Sports Medicine, and it's a very fascinating subject. REDS is an acronym for Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. The Cliff Note version of this is, and Dan, if I don't do a good job of articulating it for the sake of our listeners, please bring me back, okay? On the Garmin, you can look at what your calorie burn rate is, what you need to stay alive, as well as what you burn from an activity standpoint. Let's just say, for conversation's sake, when you go ride on Saturday, your calorie burn rate is 3,500 calories. Dan gets up in the morning, he gets dressed, he goes to the track, he rides, he comes back home. The body's already burnt probably 31 to 3,200 calories. So by the time I'm talking about after you've washed your bike. Good job getting your daughter helping you with the Sprinter van. Love it. And now you're back, right? I'm just saying, and I want people to understand it from a listener standpoint. Imagine at the end of the day, you've burnt 3,500 calories, but you only took in 2,500 calories. Well, now it's time to go to bed. You've already spent the 35. You only consumed 25. There's a gap. and now you're laying down to go to bed, and there's literally not enough calories to rebuild. Let that sink in for a moment. If you were to jump in your truck and you know a full tank of gas gets you 350 miles and you've got to go 500, you're not irritated when you run out of gas. You're like, couldn't go the distance. And you and I have talked about this on the show quite often. If as humans we were as absolute as mechanical, we certainly wouldn't let ourselves run out of gas because we're like, we don't want to be stuck on the side of the road. Well, think about Monday. You burnt 35, you took in 25. If you think about it like an integer line, you're in the hole. You get up Tuesday morning, you go to work, take care of your family, get a chance to cross train, you miss your calories by 500, you're in the hole. Do that until Saturday. Now you get to go ride your motorcycle. You burn more calories than usual, and that's just over a 6-day period, Monday through Saturday. Where this relative energy deficiency comes in is literally what the acronym is insinuating. There's not enough energy for the body to rejuvenate itself, and we just keep pushing and we keep pushing. They use a couple other acronyms. One is an LEA, low energy availability. Any wonder why we're running out of gas? We literally don't have enough calories. Now, because the way that we've been created, our body will convert and adapt and do everything it can to survive. You and I have teased about it on the show. There's a difference between surviving and thriving.
Yep.
So let that kind of sink in a little bit. If you do this for chronic extended periods of time, chronic fatigue issues like Epstein-Barr, Addison's disease, of which we see our professional athletes being negatively impacted by those, right? Chronic fatigue, Epstein-Barr, Addison's disease. Marchbanks has Addison's. Seth Hammaker has Epstein-Barr. Jet Reynolds has chronic fatigue. If you want to attach names, if you know these riders, as a vet rider, think about what we have. We love riding, but then we've got this challenges of family and profession and finances and all that goes with it. So imagine if every day you're in the hole 500, 600, 700 calories, how do you expect the human body to rebuild itself? And that's where this study that came out of the British Journal of Sports Medicine, it made its way here into the United States. You can find it in the USOC, all kinds of reports that are out there. And it's very extensive, but stop and think about it. How is the human body supposed to rejuvenate? You fill in blank. Your muscular system, your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, how are they ever supposed to get thicker and more durable and resilient to injury when there's not enough materials? Dan, you want me to build you a 2-story house, but the lumber company only drops enough lumber off for 1-story house. I can't build you something if I don't have the materials. And again, I'm just trying to give it to you in Cliff Note. I'm trying not to use the big terminology that goes with it. It's just the idea that I always like to use the analogy of an integer line. If you're in the negative every day, just on calories burnt versus calories consumed, how are you supposed to ever rebuild your body?
Yeah. And I
Like, for
think this is
example, go ahead, excuse me.
this is where you have to be careful too. Like of a lot of nutritionists will say, hey, you have to, you can only eat, 2,000 calories a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's dangerous, right? Because if you're burning 4,000 calories a day, you're in the whole 2,000 calories every single day. Yeah. Will you lose some weight? Probably,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right? But at the end of the day, you're not really doing your body any justice, especially if you're needing to perform like on the motorcycle.
Again, that sentence that you just put there has several things to unpack. Number one, you mentioned weight. You didn't mention body fat. You mentioned weight. So if you're on a calorically restricted diet, sure, you'll lose weight. But if you came to me saying you want to drop body fat and build muscle, muscle proportionally weighs more than fat. If I have a cereal bowl full of fat and a cereal bowl full of muscle and we weigh it, the bowl of muscle physically weighs more than the bowl of fat. So when someone comes to me and says they want to drop body fat, okay, well, that's different than saying you want the scale to go down. As we've teased before, I can just dehydrate you and get the scale down. That's not healthy, but if you want me to chase a number, sure, we can do that.
Yeah.
But something else that you said in that sentence that's very, very important. You mentioned the word performance. I know a lot of our listeners are not getting paid to go race their dirt bikes, but you want to stay healthy, you want to stay off the ground, you need to eat. The other thing that you said that's extremely, extremely important is when you're being told to be in this huge caloric gap, right? You've got to think about the idea that the human body has what's called the hierarchy of needs. So you're sitting here, you're going out and you're burning a tremendous amount of calories. but you're not taking enough in. If you just zoom out, take all emotion, and you run that through an equation over and over and over again, how many days in a row do you think you can do this before you're going to, essentially the wheels are going to come off the bus? And with that being said, I will give a specific example that just happened last Thursday. There was a vet rider that had hired a registered dietitian, and the registered dietitian, and I quote from this individual, said, "My nutritionalist told me to take in 2,700 calories because that will be more than enough to fuel race day," unquote. We looked at their Garmin dashboard. He burnt 4,900 calories in 1 day of racing.
And I think that's where it gets, okay, you went to a nutritionist. Yeah, they know nothing about our sport. They know nothing about.
Just start with the calorie burn rate, right?
Yeah.
We're not throwing registered dietitians under the bus, but when someone's like, you got to take in no more than 2,700 calories, well, based on what number?
Right.
If Dan's calorie burn rate, including moto, is 2,700 calories, then I'll meet you. I'll meet you there. But that's where we don't go into some generic formulas, and it's kind of like you just made the comment right here, the recovery, right? Recovery calories. I would say probably 50% of our listeners have heard someone say, hey, you need to take in a 3-to-1 carbohydrate protein ratio as recovery. Just a little side note, if you want to get into a calculator and doing it, we actually use a 4-to-1 ratio. We found that that's a little bit better on the recovery side. You could argue there's all kinds of schools of thought. Some say 3-to-2 carbohydrate to protein ratios. Again, way beyond what we need to get into today. Maybe in future shows we will, because it just takes a little bit of a calculator. It's all on your phone. But the point is, when you're looking at recovery, you'll always have to start with what you're burning. I'm never going to sit here ever and tell somebody how many calories to consume until we've done a tremendous, when I say a tremendous, I need at least a week. And it needs to include some seat time, and it needs to include seat time in an ideally a race setting, but at least at race intensity. Because, I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, but when you're racing somebody, your heart rate's going to be higher. Most people would agree with that. Well, higher heart rate means higher calorie burn rate. You're going to consume more electrolytes and you're going to lose more water. So it's my responsibility to help you figure out not only what we're replenishing, but more importantly, how much. So that's why that number 2 is so incredibly important.
I have a question for you before we move on to number 3. Like the average vet guy, right? Just average weekend warrior, if you will. What's the percentage, if you could put a percentage on this, or maybe even some insight, that of those riders or of that community of people are walking around? Obviously we all have stress, right? The average vet guy, because we have jobs, families, a lot going on in life. What is the average, do you think, of the people that are walking around that have Addison's or or Epstein-Barr, some form of chronic depletion of energy? What do you think? It's like, is there a lot of people out there, you think, off the top of your head, or is it not very common? I'm curious to just get your insight on that.
Before I answer the question, I want to make sure that we do a little bit, just go down just a little bit. You can have fatigue-related symptoms and not have Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue. We've talked about this on the show, but Dan, because you've brought it up, I think it's perfect timing. I want you to create a flow chart from left to right. Cells make up tissue, tissues make up organs, and a series of organs make up a system. When you get diagnosed with a fatigue-related disease, such as Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue, Addison's, that's when the system itself is diseased. Keyword diseased. In systems, they have to be interchanged. They have to be connected. When you're talking about somebody walking around being exhausted, I would say you're looking at 75 to 90% of the people are exhausted, mentally and or physically. And with the Garmin, you think back not even 15, 20 years ago, all the watches used to give us was your resting heart rate. And then when you turn on an activity, it would give you your active heart rate. That was all you got. We would download that information into Excel and we'd plot it. And that was about as grandiose as your reports got. Now with the Garmin, you have several recovery metrics in no particular order. You have heart rate variability, HRV. You have body battery. You have resting heart rate. You have stress score. And then you can look at you can factor in your sleep ratios. How much deep sleep to how much awake time. So we look at the quantity of 9 hours and then how much of that's deep sleep versus awake. Deep sleep is when your body releases the recovery hormones, testosterone and HGH. So that's why I say the numbers are all the way up into the 90s, because when you look at the Garmin, and this would go across the board, even including young riders, obviously all the way up to and including vets, most people don't eat enough, don't drink enough, and don't get enough sleep. And that too has a flow pattern. Water plus food equals sleep. If you don't get enough food and you don't get enough water, it negatively impacts sleep. Not to get too far in front of our subjects here this afternoon, but let's stop and think about this. Excuse me. How many people are not sleeping well because they're not eating enough? And then because they're not eating enough, they go to bed tired. They don't sleep well. They wake up more fatigued. They're determined to drop the body fat. They've got to go take care of their bills, take care of their family, go do their job. They go and they hammer it out. Then they want to go to the gym to try to get fitter, to drop the body fat, to go ride the motorcycle. You see how fast we're in a downward spiral? And
I
that's
need
what
you
I
to
love
have a
about the Garmin is it's kind of like stop the noise, you know? Go ahead, excuse me.
I need you to have a one-on-one uh conversation with Sabrina. This is kind of off record, off topic, but she believes that she can't eat before bed or can't eat past
Mhm.
7 o'clock because it's going to affect her sleep.
Yep. Now, if you want to go grab a textbook clinical test and they're going to go in it, sure. You you know how it is with social media. All you've got to
Yeah.
do is come up with some idea and you can find some report that'll match it somehow directly or indirectly. All I know doing this for 40 plus years now is that the consistency of people who don't eat enough calories and cannot sleep and are packing on body fat is 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I say this as politely as I can. No one ever gets fat by eating fruits, vegetables, and lean protein. So now we're back to the quantity of food. Let's figure out what you're burning.
Yeah.
Now that we've got the quantity of burn, then if you really want to get into it, Dan, and again, we could do a whole show on macros. There's times during the year that you want to be taking, let's just go for even numbers. Let's just say for the listener, they're burning 2,000 calories. 50% of those should come from carbohydrates. 50% of those calories should come from protein. 25% come from fat. And then as you move into the race season and you're riding and you're racing more, you can kind of move those percentages around. I'm just using that as a benchmark.
Yeah.
But this is where, again, a lot of these subjects get taken out of context. They'll say, Rob, do you use ratios? Up front, I would tell you no, but that's a lie. We do ratios. But again, I say this as politely as I can for the sake of listeners. Don't think I'm being a dickhead. I'm less concerned about ratios as much as I'm concerned about just starting by meeting your calorie demands.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Let's
I
start
get
somewhere
this all the
basic
time.
first.
Well, I'll get somebody that'll ask me about macros, right? And I'm like, but I can't get you to step on the scale twice a day.
Yeah.
You want me to get a calculator out and calculate your macros, but you can't step on a scale twice a day for me to validate your hydration levels. See, and again, I don't want people to think I'm being a smart aleck.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like you're stepping over $100 bill to pick up a penny, not even a dollar anymore. You're stepping over $100 bill to pick up a
Yeah.
penny. And that's why I appreciate everybody who listens to the show. And if you listen to the 14 previous, as we talk about these subjects, we want to make sure that the fundamentals are there. But then what happens if all of a sudden our listeners are like, man, I feel good. I can ride not one day a week, Dan. I can ride twice. Well, you and I are super pumped for them, but I want them to know, hey, this is going to change your calorie burn rate. This is going to change your electrolyte burn rate. This is going to change your hydration levels. And if we don't figure those out, they negatively impact your sleep. And then when you don't recover, you end up going down the wrong direction. And as a byproduct, you put on body fat. So now our
Yep.
listeners are like, what the hell is going on? You know,
Yep.
you're just not eating enough calories.
Okay. Number 3, make sleep a priority, quantity and
Mhm.
quality. But again, you got to make this kind of goes back to Sabrina's thing, right? You got to make sure that you got the proper nutrition before you can make sure you're getting the proper sleep. So this is one of those topics, Coach, that the gentleman that I was speaking to, you guys talk
Yeah.
about sleep a lot, and stress, and this was one of them. So
Yeah. Well,
it's
I'm going to get you one of those t-shirts. We have them here in Florida. It's called the House Divided. and the mom went to U of F and the dad went to FSU, right? So during college season, it's like it's the house divided. This is a very, very, very familiar one, and ironically, it tends to be between the husband and the wife because, and I'll give you a very specific example. If you're a household where you're following my advice, your diet consists predominantly of fruits, vegetables, and lean protein. No one's ever gotten overweight eating that way. If you take the 2,000 calories that we were talking about, if you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, nutrient rich, not a lot of calories. So you find yourself eating a plethora of volume, which tends to mess with people mentally. If you're training 2 to 3 times a week in heart rate zone 2 and below, you're leveraging stored body fat for fuel. If you're doing speed work once or twice a week, sport specific, if you cross train with a rower, 1 day a week's pretty hard, 1 day on the motorcycle is hard. It's just the nature of the beast. If you do all of that and you mixing foods correctly, so it's a low glycemic mix, it's just like 2-stroke oil, right? If you eat something that has sugar, let's say you have an apple and then you eat something that has protein in it, the protein and the fat is going to offset and bring down the sugar content of the carbohydrates, right? That's how you make it. You can make a snack low glycemic so you don't get the insulin spike, so your blood sugar levels are stabilized. Win, win, win. Then you could have somebody in your house counting 11 almonds, won't eat after 7 p.m., and is putting on body fat. Okay. Now, I'll get somebody that'll be out there and say, but Rob, I'm doing exactly what you said and I'm still putting on body fat. Well, we need to get a look at your blood work. What's going on? Let's get a hormonal panel. Well, let's take a look at what could be going on with your blood chemistry. You probably have heard that there's a couple doctors that have written some reports. Eating for your blood type, that's a very serious thing. If you're somebody that you're eating fruits, vegetables, and lean protein, and you're bridging your calorie gap and you're not dropping body fat, you got to start looking at hormones. And when you get into hormones, anybody that is an endocrinologist, they're smart, and then there's next level smart. That is crazy smart because hormones' role in the body is to communicate. And you're talking about A affecting B and A and B affecting D and D affects Z and Z will come out. That's like next level. But that's where, like we have a blood evaluation company because that's not my lane. I know my parameters and I don't get out of it, right? We have Dr. Brainy that helps us with it and he does a phenomenal job. But when you start getting into blood chemistry, now this is where I wanted to talk about the house divided. Can you imagine, Dan, if you're in a house and your partner, your wife, is counting 11 almonds and all training is balls to the wall, doesn't eat after 7 p.m., and they're not losing any body fat. And then you're over here doing the exact opposite and you're not losing body fat. Well, you've got 2 different examples and you're not burning body fat. That's hormonal.
I can eat a cheeseburger, coach, and go right to bed and sleep all night.
Absolutely. And this is where I didn't make up blood chemistry, right? If I know that if that burger high in protein and fat and you have tomato and mayonnaise, I'd get rid of the bread because I think the bread on the bun isn't worth it. The French fries are what's worth it. So get rid of the bread, eat the French fries. But what you're doing is now you satisfy hunger. And that's where we get into hierarchy of needs. Now you satisfy hunger. Now you're going to be able to sleep. You sleep deeply, your body releases HGH and testosterone, you wake up leaner than you were when you went to bed. But you'll get somebody that says, oh, no, we don't eat after 7 p.m. Why? And I've said this before on the show, and I'm going to say it for probably the 50th time. Anybody who has a young child that cannot use words, and even one who can use words if you want, tonight, do not feed them after 5 p.m. Put them to bed. Call me tomorrow and tell me how that worked out for you.
Yep.
Because that little one isn't going to stay asleep and they're going to be in your room telling you they're hungry.
Yep.
Well, just because we're adults, the rules don't change. And yes, our metabolisms do change and stuff like that. But this is where, again, we could do an entire 5-hour show, Dan, on if you're staying physically active as a vet rider, you can't be comparing the metabolism conversations that somebody who is 100% sedentary, you cannot be compared to the same science or the same physiology. That's why we started our complete med solutions. You're going to tell me, Dan, who does the best he can, but let's admit, Dan, you eat better than you eat worse, right? You don't have a bunch of bad eating habits. Well, You work your tail end off 12, 15 hours a day. You are your daughter's dad. You are Sabrina's husband. You're running a couple of your own businesses. You're riding on the weekends. You're trying to cross train. You're going to tell me that your blood work is going to be evaluated to somebody who's stuck in a corner office, 100 pounds overweight, lives on nicotine, caffeine to stay alive, drinks hard liquor all night long? Your blood work's going to be, just because they're the same age, same height, same gender, same. So Dan's blood work's going to be compared to that dude's. How do you even
I
rationalize
hope
that?
not. I hope not.
Well, but when you go to the doctor, it is.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because now, again, this isn't to get on a political soapbox here, but literally, if you go and you study, if you look at what quote unquote the ranges are, notice how those ranges have changed over the years,
Yeah.
because we want to
So
be
why?
careful not to call people too fat. And now we have this epidemic of obesity. Well, now the scale's been, it's kind of like back in school, right? They graded to they, what do they call it when you got a test and it was graded to the curve of the class?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Come on, man. I can't have our listeners' blood work be evaluated to somebody who is, again, I'm not saying that any of us live in a glass house, but if you enjoy riding moto and you try to do your best to eat cleanly, there's no way that your blood should be compared to somebody that's your same age that's totally sedentary, horrible eating habits, overdrinks, smokes, nicotine, caffeine, add to whatever list you want. How is your blood supposed to be? That's why our blood work is compared against an activity level in the ranges that should be associated with clean eating and an active lifestyle.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Number 4. There's a number 6 that I kind of want to put this in now.
Jump it.
Okay, I want to put this in now because it kind of goes in. You brought up smoking and all this, right?
Yeah.
You know those Zen pouches
Mm-hmm.
that have nicotine in them, and I think there's like salt in them. You may know more than me, but a lot of people use them to get off of like chewing tobacco or even smoking. I think. How unhealthy are those?
Horrible.
They are horrible.
Horrible. Yeah. It's all synthetic. That's what's so crazy. I'm not a tobacco chewer, but when I was in, I was born in 1968. So for anybody who's a listener, they can kind of think about, like, when I was in 5th grade, I remember you would go to the convenience store and there was probably 40 different types. I mean, remember the big packs of chewing tobacco, like Red
Yep.
Man, you open up the foil and you'd see those guys take that big wad. I don't know about you, but like my grandfather chewed to his last day he was alive, and he lived to be almost 100. He cooked, my grandmother, she cooked everything in the lard that came out from the bacon. Everything was cooked
Yeah.
in bacon and lard. Like I said, chewed tobacco. I'm not advocating tobacco, but that was 100% raw tobacco that came out of the ground. There was no additives, no addictive things that we know that the tobacco company has done over the years. So yes, sir, anything that's been added to it. Now, again, I'm not saying that raw tobacco out of the ground is healthy, but it's nothing compared to what it used to be when it was just truly raw tobacco. So this new stuff is so,
yeah, because I see a lot of people, it's the Zen
Mhm.
pouches and the vape boxes.
Yeah, that's where I was going to
can't
go
get it,
next. That's where I was going to go next. If you think the Zens are bad, the vaping is like 1,000 times worse than regular smoking. There was a doctor that I spoke to. I was actually doing a performance camp out in Oklahoma, and his son was attending the camp, and we had a rain out day, and we were just having a conversation about nutrition and stuff. And this is when vaping was just kind of on the up and up, and they'd already started doing some research on it. But you've got that stuff blowing into your lungs. It's like you might as well just put your lips on the exhaust pipe of your truck and just step on it.
Wow.
But because it doesn't seem to have the residual, right? You don't see it on your fingertips. It's not on your breath. It almost seems like it's like, well, because it doesn't stay in the air the way cigarette smoke does, it must be better for you. No, because it's got, again, more chemicals and all this other stuff in it. Vaping is bad news all the way around.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me derail you. I have a lot of people that I know use those Zen pouches, and I was thinking,
Man, let's say this for the defense of your friends. If they're trying to cut down on the amount of nicotine that they're getting in, good job, guys. Keep it up. We understand what you're doing. If you're using it as a stepping stone to get off of it, Dan and I are not mocking addiction. We're not saying that at all. If you're using it for that reason, but if you're a young athlete and you think you're doing something that's not as bad as regular dipping, you couldn't be further from wrong.
Well, and I think that was the intention of those Zen packages, is to use
Yeah.
them to wean yourself off of whatever else you're doing that's worse, right? But now it's like it's a trend to see a lot of the young kids, chewing these Zen pouches and stuff. And um, yeah. Anyhow, sorry, it came to mind when you were talking about smoking, and
Yeah.
I got a buddy that pops those Zen pouches like they're going out of style, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna ask Coach how bad these things are.
Well, and the crazy part is, if you've seen the prices on that stuff,
It's insane.
that's what I'm just such a
People that
tight
smoke
Rob with them.
cigarettes, yeah, they're
Oh,
just, yeah, it's like fireworks, Coach. I love going to like a good fireworks show, but to go out, like 4th of July is coming, for us, and to go out and spend $300 to light a bunch of fireworks off in the street, I'm out.
I'm out. Yep. Number one, I don't like loud noises. Number two, the mess that they're left behind. And trust me, I'm not a tree hugger. I think everybody
Oh,
knows
they're
that.
probably thinking, you guys hate America.
Yeah, exactly. But my whole thing is, it's like all that shit gets blown up and it ends up in trees and all over the place. And to me, fireworks make no sense. Like you say, they're great spectacle and stuff like that. But it's just like, again, mainly because I don't like loud noises. And I just don't like the aftermath. Like, I don't have a problem when the kids are in the street, just like my dad used to make us do, clean your shit up. That's not your
Yeah, yeah.
neighbor's problem. They don't want to come out tomorrow morning and they heard you all night. They don't want to see all your shit left behind, because my dad's like, there's a broom and a dustpan. Go clean your firecrackers up,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm with
Okay.
you.
Number 4, make soft tissue maintenance a priority. I think this one is one that we as vet riders probably neglect maybe the most, right? I'm not sure the last time that I've seen a guy in a sprinter van with a foam roller, or with tennis balls and whatnot, on a practice day. I don't see it very often. This one is easy to neglect and forget. I wanted to pick your brain because there is this one, there's a few different avenues that you can go down, whether or not you have a lot of money to spend on some recovery items, or if you don't, right? There's some alternatives that you can use. Let's start with the money is tight, Coach. When we do when the class that I took, one of them that you did at Riverfront, you asked everybody to bring a tennis ball or a foam roller or something, because you wanted to physically show us how to do some of these exercises. But um, using a 2-liter bottle as in lieu of a foam roller, right?
Mhm.
Um,
I want people to think about, you could go, there's two classifications here. Dan, if you're like one of our riders, Bud Guthrie, he gets a chance. He's got a client, a friend of his, that flies him out to World Vets. They trailer their bikes out. Somebody drives them out for him, and Bud gets to fly private. And he gets to go out to the races. When you're traveling and you have limited space, when you get to your destination, go to the grocery store, go to the convenience store, buy a 99-cent 2-liter soda bottle of anything, shake it up, let the carbonation, and what it'll do is it'll essentially make a 16-inch foam roller is what it does for 99 cents. You're done for the race weekend, throw it in the trash, right? If you don't have, because I mean, seriously, a foam roller could be anywhere between $25 and $35, and a 99-cent water 2-liter bottle of any soda. I mean, it has to be soda that's carbonated. Shake that up really well, and it gets it nice and taut, and it'll do the same thing that a foam roller will do. So
um,
I don't want people to think they have to spend money on a foam roller if it's tight.
yeah, if you do have money and money's not an issue, you can go buy those foam rollers. I think they're maybe 25, $30, Coach, something like
25,
that.
$30. And then
Uh,
some advanced ones now that have like raised lips on them and different
yeah.
textures on them and all. My big thing is, and I say this to everybody I get a chance to work with, if you're not going to use it, don't purchase it.
Yeah.
And if you buy the 2-liter bottle for 99 cents and you love the way that your calves always feel good when you're sitting there and you roll it, and all of a sudden you got good ankle flexibility, you can get up on your toes, your heels can drop below the pegs and it doesn't hurt to come back. You got that doggone nagging in between your shoulder blades and you're using a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball. You know, I don't know, Dan, if you have them on the West Coast, but we have what's called Play It Again Sports here in the South. You go in and the lacrosse teams, they'll literally sell 5-gallon buckets of what they call greasers. So when the lacrosse balls get overused, they get that little sheen on them. They don't work quite as well. You can go down and pick up 5 of those for $1 at Play It Again Sports.
While you're playing against sports, tennis balls, lacrosse balls, Coach,
Yeah.
you
Golf balls.
in golf balls. You suggested starting with tennis balls, right? Because they're not as hard. You can do some damage with a lacrosse ball or a golf ball if you're not careful. So know what you're doing
Exactly.
there. Um, if you do have money, right, get a massage from the licensed massage therapist,
Yep.
not an Asian rub and tug place, fellas, but a licensed massage tech. The
Well,
Normatec,
I'm sorry, not to interrupt you there. I want that listeners to understand when you go to that massage therapist, nobody's going to know every square inch of your body except your partner better than that massage therapist. So build a relationship with them. Dan, I always tell my athletes, please go to a high-end cycling store or a running store because endurance athletes, they usually get massage on a regular basis. Dan, to your point, all joking aside, right? If I'm working with you and that massage therapist, they provide us a written report, they can tell me, hey, his shoulders are rotated forward. So that tells me not, let's back off on the chest work. Let's try to get those shoulders back into anatomical neutral. If you've got that right rhomboid, the muscles in between your shoulder blades, they're constantly in spasm. Well, let's back off the lat pullbacks because obviously you're over engaging those rhomboids. That's why it keeps going into spasm. So you take the inexpensive tennis ball, you keep trying to work the trigger point out, get the massage therapist that helps us find muscle patterns, and then I can build your strength program based on the feedback from that massage therapist. So I just wanted to clarify, like I say,
yeah.
the massage therapist becomes your best friend because we can find muscle patterns.
Well, and you build a relationship with them, right? They already know like you said before, they learned to know you and your body and what you do. We ride motorcycles.
Yep.
It's a lot different than a lot of sports out there. So yeah,
They'll keep
but
us from getting hurt, believe it or not,
yeah.
because if your rhomboids, the muscles that are in between your shoulder blades pull your shoulders back, if those muscles are tight and all of a sudden you come into a corner and the front end blows through the corner and the bike goes away from you, you'll end up tearing those muscles in your shoulders because they were already tight before you got on the bike. Now the velocity and the weight of the bike pulling it away from you, you end up just literally ripping the muscle tissue. So what we're using the massage report for is to find patterns to offset them before they become an injury.
Normatec boots, those things are you guys probably seen them, the top guys, they post pictures on Instagram after they get hurt. I not even actually what they get hurt. A lot of use them but they're those big boot looking things. They go up all the way to your leg. Those things are very cool. Um,
Those are based on what's called the lymphatic system. So like, when you get an infection and like behind your ear, they'll say your lymph nodes are swollen. Well, the fluid is just one of the fluids that floats through the body as part of the recovery and immune system and stuff like that. So those are pneumatic. And what they'll do is you slide them on, they look like space pants, right? And literally they're sectional. So when you hook them up to the box, they'll start at your feet and they'll squeeze and release, and then they go up your ankles and they'll squeeze and release. They go up your calves, up your quads. What they're doing is I know this sounds a little suggestive, but they're milking the lymphatic fluid out of the extremities. This is what facilitates recovery. And now they happen to go up and over on your arms as well. Normatec is one of the top companies. Hyperice is one of the top ones. But to your point, Dan, you're talking anywhere between $900 and $1,500 for the set of pneumatics. So again, they do work, but they're only part of the equation. If you're somebody who's on a tight budget, contrast therapy, a bathtub using cool, not ice cold, cool, and then warm, not scalding, warm, just a 10, 15 degree temperature, you'll get contrast therapy benefits. So we always want to make sure people understand that there's alternatives, whether you're tight on time and or money, there's all kinds of alternatives and solutions on both sides of the equation.
and a Theragun. I suggest everybody to get a Theragun. They're amazing. They're easy to use by yourself in a lot of areas on your body. If you get arm pump, a lot of guys use them at the track on their forearms for arm pump. Um,
And I like them
they're
because,
amazing.
Dan, not that I'm recommending it, right? But even if you're driving, you can still work on your quads. You can work them in your shoulders. I don't recommend that you drive and do the Theragun in your shoulders, but this is where you could be driving and you could drop a tennis ball in between your shoulder blades while you're driving. Or if you're driving, you could at least work on your quads. Or best case scenario, you have Sabrina driving to the track, and then you could do Theragun over in the passenger side safely. So it's a win-win for you.
Yeah, Well,
There was a joke there.
I was gonna say, geez, yeah, that ain't ever happening. Sorry.
That's not going to happen to any of our, I would say less than 1% of our listeners let their brides. I know there's a few, but I don't see many dudes like, yeah, we'll let my wife drive my Sprinter van and my 3 likes and my two.
I love my wife, but nope.
Nope.
That's when I had my Corvette. I wouldn't even let her drive the Corvette. So you drive your own car.
I'm sure she understands at this point.
All right, the last one, Coach. Monitor and manage your stress level with the Garmin. We talk every month about Garmin and the useful tools and resources that they provide, and the stress level. That stress score is critical in recovery.
You have to stop and think about it this way. Garmin is the only platform that has HRV, body battery, stress score, the best sleep data I've ever seen. And again, I'm not here trying to sell Garmin's. I'm just trying to help our listeners have the straightest line between where they're at and where they want to be. And there used to be a company called Basis Sleepwatch. And I used to wear that at night to get my sleep data, and then I'd wear my Garmin's during the day to get my athletic data. I don't know about you, Dan, but I'm not a big fan of clutter. So to me, when you've got something that will help you on the performance side as well, when I say performance, anytime you're working out, I'm not saying you have to go and try to win world vets. I'm just saying if you are going to work out, it'd be really nice to know what your average heart rate is, what your max heart rate is, calorie burn rate. If you're doing something that has intervals, it tracks all of that data. So it just makes it very easy for me to serve you as a physiologist. Hey, how much work did you do? I can look at the activity dashboard. And as we've said on the show numerous times, what's the definition of overtraining? Not absorbing the work that you're doing, period. Whether you're training 30 minutes a week or you're training 30 hours a week. If you can't absorb it, you're overtraining. And that's why the metrics become so important. I was talking to one of our, I don't mind, well, he's in the futures program. I'll leave it at that. And I remember talking to his dad. His dad's an ex-professional, and his exact words were, I don't want to get into analysis paralysis. And I love that comment because he's old school. And he's like, look, sometimes we're going to ride no matter what the numbers say. And I said, I understand that, right? Goes back to like we were talking about. You have an impromptu interruption.
Yeah.
If you know that rain is coming in over the next 3 days and you're going to get washed out and you're fortunate enough that you can ride whenever, okay, you might have to maybe move your speed day from Thursday to Tuesday because you're going to get rained out. And the numbers, because this goes back to what we said earlier, Dan. You and I lay out a week. We don't know what the weather is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen. The dozer at the track may have broken and the track's not prepped. And today you can't ride, right? Well, you have to be able to improvise. Here's where it becomes dangerous. Let's say, Dan, we laid your week out and you were going to ride hard at the track. You were going to do sprint intervals on Wednesday. And then you see the rain is coming, so you decide to move your sprint work to Tuesday. Well, we didn't know that, and we had a heavy day on Sunday. You're supposed to be recovering, and instead you end up going back to back, or the hard load levels get a little bit too close.
Right.
That's the danger in what you run into, because you're like, yeah, but if I don't, I may not be able to get to ride for another week. So I want the listeners to think about two things. When today's over, it's over. We don't pull yesterday into today. You don't stack them like that. And number two, when you move things backwards, we're supposed to do speed work on Thursday and you move that to Tuesday. Well, when you finished Monday's workouts, you did not expect that you were going to do another hard day tomorrow, but circumstances caused a change. That's why I say it's always better to err on the side of caution. Just because you can do another moto, don't. Just because you can lift another set, don't.
Yeah.
You live for another day. And you're not taking the low road. What you're doing is you're improving the chances of improved consistency. All we're trying to do is improve our consistency percentage. Well, if you keep re-injuring yourself, if you keep getting sick, we reduce our consistency. Consistency is way more important than anything else.
And I think it's more important for us as vet riders, right? The consistency. A lot of us can't afford to get hurt.
No.
So taking the high road or the low road or however you phrase that is the smartest way to go for us. And I hope that, I would say 99.9999% of us are not making money doing this at a vet level for sure, right?
Right. Yep.
So, do what's right for your safety and your health before anything.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, in like we were saying earlier, if I took you out to the track and asked for 4 easy laps and I asked for 4 fast laps, they're not going to deviate much. And with the Garmin on recovery, you might look good in the mirror, you might feel good, but if the numbers, let me elaborate on that literally for 10 seconds, Dan. A lot of times people will look in the mirror and they go, I feel fine. I look good. I don't have dark circles under my eyes. I feel like I slept good. Well, you go and you look at the resting heart rate and it's up 11 beats. And you look at the body battery and it's in the hole. And you look at HRV and it's out of balance. You look at the stress score, it's excessively high. Well, just because you look good and feel good, it's telling you that there's something going on inside. Usually that means we have an infection of some sort. So you
interesting.
could go ahead and you could just ignore all symptoms, right? The Garmin's giving you 5 or 6 metrics and you could be Mr. Tough Guy and you could just push through it. Well, now the virus gets a hold of you and now we lose 7 to 10 days while you try to recover from the virus versus acknowledging the numbers, especially now that there's more than just 1 or 2. I understand
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that could influence an elevated heart rate. Well, when you add elevated heart rate with body battery, with stress score, with HRV, well, then you start to go, okay, there's enough consistency here that I look good, feel good, but something internally is just not right. Now, that doesn't mean you just sandbag it. It just means you were going to go out and do speed work today, but instead, just go do a heart rate zone 2 and heaven forbid, just go for a walk. Don't
Yeah.
run, walk, right?
Yep.
Because at least you get time on your feet. People don't realize you use more muscle walking than you do running because when you run, you use momentum. So just going for a walk has a tremendous amount of benefits, but the heart rate is low. If you don't, this is a double negative. If you don't fatigue the system, your body's able to fight the virus more. But if you go and you exercise and weaken the system and the virus is present, you're going to get for sure smacked down by the virus. Because when you wear yourself down, you make the virus stronger.
Yeah.
So if you have all the symptoms and you're still hell bent to do a little bit of something, go for a walk, the stress shouldn't be too bad and it allows you to still kill the virus. So you give up one workout, you get the next couple months, next couple weeks, excuse me. You ignore the symptoms, you ignore the metrics, you go out and you smash the workout in, then you're down for 10 days. Would you rather get one workout and give up 10 or give up one and pick up 10? I think all the listeners would go with the latter of the two, but that's where I'm not saying that you're being soft. The numbers, we have to live and die by them.
Live and die by the numbers, coach.
Right.
Episode number 15. It's been awesome.
Absolutely.
Recover like a pro. I think, hope our listeners got something out of this today. This is for us, for the vet guy. This is critical. It is absolutely critical
Absolutely.
that we recover and we don't recover like we did when we were 18 years old, coach.
That's right.
Thank you. I want to thank all the listeners. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Make sure you're sharing our show with your friends. Leave those comments down below. We'd love to read them. If you have questions, reach out to us. Instagram. I'm on Instagram a lot. Coach has got an email or just, we do monitor the comment section. So
Absolutely.
leave a comment there. Special thanks to Garmin Heart Rate Monitors and Scales for being a presenting sponsor on the show here. And Coach, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks all the listeners. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.